about instructional design models for online tutoring, and it is presented by Maria Fumaroni. She's a university specialist professor in entrepreneurship and social sciences. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. We kindly request you to hold your questions by then. Well, we welcome Ms. Maria on our platform today. Ms. Maria, the floor is all yours. Ms. Maria?
Thank you, Maria. Welcome, everyone. I'm delighted that so many of you could make it today. I'm pleased to be here. Thanks for inviting me. Marhaba, alhamdulillah, is me Maria. I'm going to talk about instructional design model for online tutoring. The purpose of this presentation is giving you an overview regarding instructional design and show you some of the most relevant models for online tutoring and learn how to determine which one fits better your online course. I divided the presentation in the most important topics to take into account when we talk about instructional design. To start with, I will conceptualize the idea for virtual learning environment, then I will identify the IT component. After that, the main models when analyzing and highlighting advantages and disadvantages. And finally, we are going to learn how to choose an IT model for online training. At the end of the session, please feel free to write your question in the chat box. If I ask you, what is instructional design? How much do you know about it? Please, now I encourage all of you to write one or two words, lines in the chat box. I want to read some ideas about instructional design. Any word that came to your mind when you talk about instructional design, or how idea, or if have you ever been listening to this word? Someone may want to say anything about instructional design. Good morning, everyone, for many parts of the world. Wow. The term instructional design has been interpreted in various ways of the basis of grounding theories. It was fast becoming a key instrument in education. Its relevance was established during and after World War II with enormous success by incorporating training videos in the US Air Force and Army. The 21st century requires more diverse and holistic learning skills than ever before, due to changing global paradigms in technological, social, economic, and cultural contexts. I'd like to share this figure with you regarding the history of instructional design. The brief history. The origin instructional designs began during World War II, when large number of psychologists and educators joined forces to design training materials and apply their knowledge to assessment. The program instructional movement, 1954, Skinner with his article, The Science of Learning and the Art of Teaching, coined the concept of material for program instruction. In 1956, Bloom leads the development of the taxonomy of educational objectives. Early 60s, Robert Meyer emphasized the importance of desired behavior, the assessment of conditioned learning in the writing of learning objectives. The evaluation movement refers to criterion. 1962, Glaser coined the term criteria-based measure to assess early entry and subsequent proficiency after the learning process. The condition of learning, 1965, Gagné identifies the 9 levels of instruction, highlighting some areas of special importance in the learning hierarchy and subsequent hierarchical analysis. Increased interest in the system approach, 1970s, the number of models based on information processing developed in military, academic, and organizational contexts, use means to improve the quality of learning. The birth of e-learning, 1990s, the method began to integrate computer in an academic and interactive context like Plato, the first computer-assisted learning system. At the same, there is a great interest in the principles of cognitive psychology, a greater interest in constructivism and the importance of performance. 1990s, the constructivist theory emphasized the importance of authentic learning tasks that replicate the current complexity of the real world as opposed to previous theoretical approach. The rise of online learning, 2000, the expansion of internet, improved connectivity and social media, make online learning viable and more affordable means of learning. And 2010 and beyond, we now live in the age of learning technology in any form, social, mobile, and personalized. Big data and learning analysts give us more information about how learning happens for each person. Taking into account their own preferences, social and mobile learning is at the heart of this age of learning. This brings me to the end of this point and leads me directly to the next one. The IT component identification. Suppose you want to design an online course. How would you go about it? I want, again, if someone of you, please feel free to write in the chat box which things we have to take into account when you design an online course. Someone want to write? Doesn't matter if right or wrong. We are learning here. What do we have to take into account when you design an online course? Nobody want to say? Let me show you, don't worry. The component of online course design. Level of student, great. Malik, thank you. Level of student, yes, it's very important, of course, yes. Which another things? All right, the component of online course design. The first step in instructional design is the clear identification of the course, of the part of the course that is needed. The name of the online course for sure. The content, yes, Ava, thank you. The content, yes, for sure. Very good, thank you for your contribution. The name of the online course, the name that identifies the course, it is suggested that it be short. The time required, the age, yes. The age and the student level is about the audience. Yes, the time required, for sure. You have to know how much time do you have to spend in the course. The tool, like Zoom of Google Meet, yes, for sure. Which tool you will use? Yes, Malik, thank you. Richa, thank you. Thank you for your contribution, Maha. The communication mode like, yes, LMS or emailing, assessment strategy. Very good, Richa. Thank you for your contribution. Yes. It's also possible to design only a fragment of the course, but it's necessary to say the name of the module, session, or unit or block. Designer's name, and it's the word of the author. It is recommended that the name of the person who designed is always recorded. The course duration, the time, yes, it is convenient to indicate the time that will be invested in the study of this course, in months, weeks, days, or hours. Yes. After defining the name of the course and its duration, its generalities are established. That is the information that allows us to recognize the project to respond to a real educational needs, that there is sufficient clarity in the learning that is expected to achieve. The generalities of a course, the general objective, learning objectives, potential audience, as you mentioned, the age, the level of student, the content, also mentioned in the chat box, instruction and license activity. The general objective is the main learning that the participant will achieve at the end of the online course. Its writing allows you to easily recognize what the participant will be capable of once the course has been accredited. Consider that the general objective is built thinking about the learner, the tutor or teacher. To write it is convenient to answer the question, what will you learn? Why? Answer the means. Strategies, as also was mentioned, and actions. The components of the objectives are performance verb in the infinitive, object on which the action falls, force, means, method to carry out the action, utility of the action, condition of quality of suitable. Now it is up to instructional designing to include items 3, 4, and 5, as well as the order in which they appear in the writing. It's not mandatory the order, yeah? The learning objective or specific learning, specific area whether the course is delivered. Yes, synchronous and asynchronous mode. Yes, Malik, thank you. Yes, I am totally agree. They are the various cognitive process and procedural skills that by developing gradually and systematically provide the student with the ability to do what the general objectives arise. The number of level and complexity of the specific objectives will always depend on the scope of the general objective. If the desired capacity is high, it will be necessary that several specific objectives contribute to its achievement. Potential audience. The potential audience is those to whom the online course is intended or to whom it will be a particular use. To describe the audience, it is recommended to answer the questions such: what professional training do you have? In what workplace do you work? What type of training interest do you manifest? What technical and disciplinary knowledge do you have? The level of the student, the age? What skill do you matter? The content also mentioned. In this part, a list is made of the topic and subtopic that the course should include, as well as the order of their approach, considering their degree of complexity and significance. The content is written in simple and clear expression, preferable in the form of nouns. Some may be accompanied by adjectives and other by complements. When deciding the content of the course, it is essential to use both the general objectives and the learning objectives as a reference in order to ensure congruence between the three elements. Well, the introduction then, in the introduction or presentation of the course, a brief general review of the content is offered, which allows to the student to get involved and problematize. To write the scope of the general objective is considered an explanation of that the course intends to train in the participant is expanding. Basically, how to engage students in an online classes. Yes, how to motivate them, for sure. It's also possible to ask questions that are interested in the learning that is involved in the course. Yes. List of activities. The list of course activities is a fair approximation to the action that the student must take to achieve the learning objectives, and consequently the comprehensive capacity set out in the general objectives. This list of tasks arise from looking at each learning objective and asking, what should the student do to ensure that he learns? What is stated here? Some goals involve several small actions, while others can be completed with just one. It is convenient that you write the list of activities in a simple way. The learning activities in the session of the instructional design, the core work is carried out, which include the determination of the learning that should be promoted to the student, the choice of the best strategies, as you mentioned, the search for informational input to facilitate the process, and the definition of a specific product that demonstrate the student is capable of appropriating and transferring the learning to the academic and work life. The best activities are conceived in total coherence with the previously set objectives. Activity name. Each activity has to have a name, a simple name, preferably using nouns and referring to the word they involve. The purpose. The activities of an online course have a purpose. They are designed so that the student add small learnings until they achieve of the objective set. To write the purpose, it is convenient to answer the question, what will the student learn at the end of this task that he needs to reach the capacity committed to the general and specific objectives. The introduction for the student to prepare to start an activity is advisable to offer a brief introduction of 1 or 2 paragraphs to contextualize the task, indicate what is expected of the performance, encourage the work, or challenge the student with questions. The instruction composes a sequence of steps that the student must follow to complete the task. It is convenient to use the question like, that I have to do, who should do it with, what are the specifications of the product to be delivered, through what means should it be delivered, forum, task, mailbox, the resources, and it is an online course. The ideal is that the student has at its disposal in electronic format the necessary resources for the development of the activities. We have articles hosted in the index, electronic journals, digital books with Creative Commons license for distribution and download, video for any platform, materials created by the instructional designer on Constructive, electronic portals, free access software, and others. Can you hear me properly? I read a comment.
Yes, we can.
Yes? Great. The student must know the estimated time they will dedicate to the activity in order to organize their agenda and respond to the scheduled date. The percentage and value, each activity has a value for the entry work, depending on its cognitive and practical complexity, as well as its contribution to the achievement of the objective. Evaluation criteria, as you also mentioned, the quality of each activity must be evaluated with particular criteria and weighting because the work carried out by the student is differentiated. Now, please consider this more details when you want to design an online course. The instructional design models. Now, we will move on the next point, instructional design model. What is a design model? It's a prescriptive model that provides guidelines or frameworks to organize and structure the process of creating instructional activities. These models can be used to guide your approach to the educational courses of instructional design. They have been based on system theory. That means the result of each phase have a direct impact or identity about any other component of the design process instructive. We have to keep in mind that some of the following instructional design model will be used when we consider design an online course. There are the best known instructional design models. The models are Kemp, Assure, Arts or Keller, Abbey, Harlach or Eli, Cleo Jonassen, CDT or Merrill, Dick and Curry, Soy or Meyer. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to learn each of them with their phases and advantages as well as disadvantages. The first model mentioned is the ADDIE model in the generic process traditionally used by instructional designers and training developers. The 5 phases, analysis, design, development, implementation, and evaluation, represent a dynamic, flexible guideline for building effective training and performance support tools. Instructional theories also play an important role in the design of instructional materials. Theories such as behaviorism, constructivism, social learning, and cognitivism help shape and define the outcome of instructional materials. In the ADDIE model, each step has an outcome that fits into the subsequent step. Analyze phase. In the analyze phase, instructional problems are clarified. The instructional goals and objectives are established at the learning environment, and learners' exciting knowledge and skill are identified. Below are some of the questions that are addressed during the analyze phase. Who is the audience and their characteristics? Identify the new behavioral outcome. What type of learning content exists? What are the delivery options? What are the online pedagogical considerations? And what is the timeline for project completion? As you can observe, each model have a congruence with the ID component. Design phase. The design phase deals with learning objectives, assessment instrument, exercises, content, subject matter analysis, lesson, planning, and media selection. The design phase should be systematic and specific. Systematic means a logical, orderly method of identification, developing and evaluating a set of planned strategies, as also you mentioned in the chat box, target for attaining the project goals. Specific means each element of the instructional design plan needs to be executed with attention to details. There are steps to use for the design phase: documentation of the project, instructional, visual, and technical design strategy, apply instructional strategies according to the intended behavioral outcomes, create storyboards, design the user interface and user experience, prototype creation, apply visual design. The develop phase The develop phase is where the developers create and assemble the content. Also, you mentioned content as an important component. After that, we were creating the design phase. Yes, this design is very complete. Yes, programmers work to develop and integrate technologies, test and perform debugging procedures. The project is reviewed and revised according to any feedback given. Implementation phase. During the implementation phase, a procedure for training the facilitators and the learner is developed. The facilitator's training should cover the course curriculum, learning outcomes, method of delivery, and testing procedure. Preparation of the learner includes training them on new tools, software, and hardware. This is also the phase where the project manager ensures that the books, hand-on equipment, and tools and software are in place, and that the learning application or website is functional. Evaluation phase. The evaluation phase consists of two parts, formative and summative. Formative evaluation is representing each step of the study process. Summative evaluation consists of test design for domain-specific criteria related references items and providing opportunity for feedback from the users. Assure is another model, is an ICT instructional system design process that was modified to be used by teachers in the regular classroom. Is one of which teachers and trainers can use to design and develop the most appropriate learning environment for their students. You can use this process in writing your lesson plans and improving teaching and learning. Concurrent is another model, what first proposed in the book, The Systematic Design of Instructional, published in 1978 by Walter Dick and Low Carey. The model looks at instructional design as a system beyond instructional as opposed to the beyond instructional as isolated part. Similar to the Kent model, the Dick and Carey model focuses on interrelationship between elements in the design process. For the Dick and Carey model, those elements are context, content, learning, and instruction. Dick and Carey believe that the structure, learners, material, instructional activities, delivery system, and learning work together to produce the desired outcomes. As seen in the illustration, the components of this model are executed iteratively in a parallel with other. There are 10 components in the Dick and Carey model: identify instructional goals, conduct instructional analysis, identify entry behaviors and learning characteristics, write performance objective, develop criterion reference, develop instructional strategy, develop and select instructional materials, develop and conduct formative evaluation, and develop and conduct summative evaluation. All of the models have similarities in their components. The Clay Jonassen giving constructivism as a different perspective from objectives on the learning process as a complementary learning tool with objectivism. Jonassen in 1999 proposed a model for designing constructive learning environment. Since the epistemological belief of constructivism that knowledge cannot be transmitted, the design put emphasis on providing learning experience that facilitate knowledge construction and meaning making. And this is another model of Jonassen, where we have the problem, the project, the context, representation, and space. We have related cases, information resources, cognitive tools, conversation, collaboration tools, social and contextual support. And we have, for another side, the modeling, how to model the problem, the context and the representation, the coaching, how to manipulate the situation, and scaffolding. The other model, ARCS, is an instructional design approach that focuses on the motivational aspect of the learning environment. The model was created by Sean Keller in the 80s. There are two major parts to the model. The first is a set of categories representing the 4 components of motivation: arousing interest, creating relevance, developing an expectancy of success, and producing satisfaction through intrinsic and extrinsic rewards. His categories come from as synthesized on teacher by one scholar on human motivation. The second part of the model is a process that assists instructional designers in creating appropriate motivational elements for the intent learners. The model has been implemented in a wide variety of settings and geographical location. Gerlach and Ely. The effectiveness of the Gerlach and Ely model of instruction, first introduced in 1971, was proven its value in the intervening decades. Designed by Vernon Gerlach and Donald Ely, this model has stood the test of time and continues to serve classroom teachers well. Incorporating the foundational principle of teaching and learning, this model is compatible.
Excuse me, Maria, I'm sorry.
This model is compatible with media-rich instructional approach and is appropriate not only for K-12 but also for use in higher education. The central focus of the Gerlach and Ely model is on systematic planning with equal emphasis on two essential factors on effective teaching: clearly defining teaching goals and method for reaching each of the desired learning outcomes. To that end, each of the 10 elements defined within this model address one or more of the factors: a specific of the content, a specification of objectives, assessment of entering behaviors, determination of strategy, organization of groups, allocation of time, allocation of space, selection of resources, evaluation of performance, and analysis of feedback. The next model is the Kemp design model that consists of 9 steps. The Kemp model, sometimes referred to as a Morrison, Ross, and Kemp model, has the 4 elements of design that are an integral part of course development: student, objectives, method, and evaluation. The emphasis of this model is the interdependencies of each of the steps in the process, with the belief that instructional design is a continuous cycle with revision, being an ongoing process that improves and adjusts as needed. It's also unique in its non-linear structure and the interrelated nature of those main components, allowing for flexibility as the item moves through the 9 stages of its design. This stage can be addressed simultaneously, individual, and in some cases not at all. The Kemp model encourages the designers to take the perspective of the learner so that their needs, priorities, and constraints are taken into consideration as the objectives. Course materials and assessment are created and implemented. The 9 design elements of Kemp model determine the specific goals and instructional issues.
Maria, just want to ask you about something. Which slide you're on? Because I think we sort of lost where you were. If you see the screen, is that okay for you?
Yes. No,
Okay.
I am in Kemp model.
So, do you want us to
Don't
go
worry.
before or after? Do you want us to go next or go back?
You can go to slide 18.
Okay, sorry, just a second.
Don't worry, it's totally fine. Thank you. We are going to continue with Kemp model. The 9 design elements of Kemp model is determining the specific goal and instructional issues, identify the characteristics and needs of the learner that should be taken into account, clarify the course content and analyze the proposed task, components in relationship to the set goals, define instructional objectives and learning outcomes, ensure the content for each component of instruction is sequentially and logically presented, design instructional strategies, as you also mentioned in the chat box, to enable learners to master the content also mentioned and achieve the learning outcomes. plan the instructional message, and the appropriate mode of delivery. Develop the evaluation instrument suitable for measuring and assessing learners' progress toward achievement the course objectives. Choose appropriate resources that will support the teaching and learning activities. Another model is SOI or Meyer. The purpose of this model is to promote the structure of knowledge through direct education. The foregoing emphasize constructive learning, which take an important role from the learner, so the activities carried out must be focused on the knowledge process, which exploit the creativity of the student and not only for a specific content. The SOI model shows the outline of human processes. It is based on promoting the three cognitive processes in the elaboration of knowledge: the selection of pertinent information, the organization of a new information, and the integration of said information into existing knowledge. Foundation of the SOI model, its philosophy is cognitive constructivism. Shows the island of humans through process. Its objectives is to promote the construction, understanding of knowledge through direct education. How to learn to use multimedia system. It gives the student the opportunity to apply their knowledge in different ways as long as they learn or the information they receive is relevant and important for future experience. It is an useful tool for the instructional designer to gear instrument and ensure that the learning process is effective. So your major application by providing the following benefits: integrating of previous and new knowledge, understanding the information, the student select what's really important, the student organize the information in an understandable way. It is ideal for application in scenarios such as textbook-based learning, master classes, multimedia environments where behavioral activity is not possible. This method is applied to create. CDT or Merrill, another model, component display theory, classify learning along two dimensions: content, fact, concept, procedures, and principles, and performance, remembering, using, and generalities. The theory specifies four primary presentation forms: rules, expository presentation of a generality; examples, expository presentation of instances; recall, inquisitorial generality; and practice, inquisitorial instance. Secondary presentation forms include prerequisites, objectives, helps, and feedback. The theory specifies that instrument is more effective to the extent that it contains all necessary primary and second forms. Thus, a complete lesson could consist of an objective followed by some combination of rules. Examples: recall, practice, feedback, helps, appropriate to the subject matter and learning task. The theory suggests that for a given objective and learner, there is a unique combination of presentation form that results in the most effective learning experience. Merrill explained the assumption about cognition that underlines CDT. While acknowledging a number of different types of memory, Merrill claims to associate an algorithm memory structure and directly related to the performance component of remember and use, find respectively. Associate memory is a hierarchical network structure. Algorithm memory consists of a schema or rules. A significant aspect of the CDT framework is learner control. Here, the learner has the control. Example, the idea that the learners can select their own instructional strategies in terms of content and presentation components. In this sense, instruction design according to CDT provides a high degree of individualization, since students can adapt learning to meet their own preferences and styles. In recent years, Mary has presented a new version of CDT called Component Design Theory. This new version has a more macro focus on the original theory, with an emphasis on course structures instead of lesson and instructional transaction rather than presentation forms. The application, I will give you an example using CDT, is specifying how to design instruction for a cognitive domain. CDT provides the basis for the lesson design. If we were designing a complete lesson of equilateral triangles, for example, according to CDT, it would have the following minimum components. The objective: define an equilateral triangle. generality, definition, instant examples, generality practice, state definition, instant practice, classify, feedback, correct generalities and instance, elaboration, helps, prerequisites, and context. If the generality was presented by an explanation and illustration, followed by practice examples, this could be an expository strategy. The principles will be more effective if all three primary performance forms, remember, use, and generality, are presented. Garnet is another model, condition of learning, by Robert Garnet. For example, for cognitive strategies to be learned, there must be a chance to practice developing new solutions to problems. To learn attitudes, the learners must be exposed to a credible role model or persuade arguments. Garnet suggests that the learning task for intellectual skill can be organized in a hierarchy according to complexity. Stimulus recognition, response generation, procedure following, user terminology, discrimination, concept formation, rule application, and problem solving. The primary significance of the hierarchy is to identify prerequisites that should be complete to facilitate learning at each level. Also, it was mentioned in the chat box, student level. Yeah, and here the hierarchy is to identify requisites that should be complete to facilitate learning in each level. This model adjusts to that idea. Prerequisites are identified by doing a task analysis of a learning training task. In addition, the theory outlines 9 instructional events that correspond in cognitive process: gaining attention, informing learners of the objective, stimulating recall of prior learning, presenting the stimulus, providing learning guidance, eliciting performance, providing feedback, assessing performance, engaging rotation and transfers. This event should satisfy or provide the necessary condition for learner and serve as the basis for designing instructions and selecting appropriate media. While Garnet's theoretical framework covers all aspects of learning, the focus of the theory is on intellectual skills. The theory can be applied to the design of instructional in all domains. For example, the following example illustrates a teaching sequence corresponding to the 9 instructional events for the objective: recognize an equilateral triangle, gain attention, show variety of computer-generated triangles, identify objectives, pose question, what is an equilateral triangle, recall for prior learning, review defining of triangle, present stimulus, give definition of equilateral triangle, guide learning, how, show example of how to create equilateral, elicited performance, ask a student to create different examples, provide feedback, check all examples as correct or incorrect, assess performance, provide the scores and remediation, engage retention and transfer, show picture or object, and ask the student to identify equilaterals. Now, after having mentioned the instructional design models, it is important to emphasize how to choose an ID model when you want to design your online course or a lesson of an online course. What do you think? How do you have to choose one of them? Because as you see, they have many similarities and differences, and according to the objectives, you have to choose one of them. Some of them are oriented to the cognitive and constructive theories. Others prefer the learner as creators. Others describe better the objectives, put more emphasis in the object, in the activities, in the outcomes. Others prefer the evaluation, the summative and formative evaluation and feedback. So we have to take into account the actors involved, the level of the training, the environment, institutional. Sometimes we cannot choose its institution, which can which will choose the IT model, the infrastructure technology, and the designer experience and teacher profile, if you have more experience or no in developing or creating online courses. I will share with you an example of Shonasen, that is a model that I choose for my course, a instructional design model CLE, constructive learning environment by David Shonasen, has been chosen to develop instructional design of business English course for authentic communication in an intercultural environment, intermediate level, for non-native speaker of the language, after observing and analyzing the motives and reasons why students demand to learn English for business. Based on this and the comparison of IT models, it is considered that this is adapted and articulated a relevant way with the course to be designed. First, before, after choosing the IT model, I have to analyze what is the objective of the course, the audience. So, analyzing the different models, I could see which one adapts better to my aim. Also, we can use some elements for different of them, but for sure there is one that will be the model for us. Yeah, students find it difficult to manage their tasks in the professional and work environment due to the lack of command of the English language, and they show us an identification app adjust to solve and focus on the problem, resulting in meaningful learning. Interdisciplinary work, multiculturalism as a product of globalization and development of information and communication technologies invite the constant training of people to be employable and competent in the current market for teaching, research, and education. Starting for considering the English language as a global language for business, it's intended that the student can build their learning. Through the CLE model, we work with the problem. So I found a model that put the focus on the problem. And as my course wants to resolve a problem, I consider this model as the best for my course. We work with the problem of difficult that intrinsically motivates the student to take a course and acquire knowledge from an intermediate level of prior knowledge. Through the new knowledge acquired cognitive process, they will build new meaningful knowledge to solve his difficulties. The participation of an online tutor is considered to accompany and guide the learning process. The model is based on the student being the protagonist of the teaching. Learning process, the role of the tutor will be motivate learning, feed cognitive process, offer feedback, and stimulate students. All of the reasons guide me to choose the Shonasen model. I'd like to quick go over the main points of today's topic. The instructional design was originating during the Second World War. It's not something new. It's a key instrument in education, improving the quality of learning. Instructional design model provide guidelines to organize and structure the process of creating instructional activities. IT model should be chosen based on the need for online training, as I pointed out earlier. Now, I will be happy to answer any question you may have. And I think I thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. Please, if you have any question or if you wrote in the chat box, I will be more than happy that answer them. Anyone want to write anything in the chat box? Or any doubt that you have, something that you want to clarify? If not, there is my email. You can email me and I will answer you as fast as I can. Thank you for joining us, for taking this time. Thank you. I hope all this overview about ID could help you to design your online courses and to know how to choose which one is fits better to your objectives. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution also.
Hello. Thank you everyone for joining in today. You are most welcome to open your mics now and communicate with Maria directly if you wish to.
Yes, sure.
We are going to share the recording of this webinar, so we don't share the PowerPoint. So in next 24 hours, the recording will be posted on our YouTube channel and on our website, where you can see this whole presentation again. Any questions can be directed to the presenter now. You have 5 to 10 minutes to discuss. You can write it in the chat box or open your mic and communicate directly. Getting some good feedbacks, Maria, for your presentation. Lots of people are saying thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you all of you for joining us, and I hope this helped you to
It was really
to develop. Which model have you used for your learning? Jonathan is the one I choose for my business English classes. Yes. Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now,
any of the attendees would like to add their thoughts or comments, they can add now. You can open your mic and share your thoughts about online teaching at this moment.
It is based on instructional model of teaching. I'm not sure about it, Farhad. I choose this model because when I design my online course about business, I focus on the problem that people that don't speak English as a native language need to solve. And I try to choose the model that better fits with this, that is focus on problem solving. But I'm not sure about teaching ALT. Maybe you can use another depending on the audience also and the objective of your course.
Yes, definitely. It depends on the levels of the learner. It depends on the course you're teaching, the environment you're teaching in, age group as well. So instructional model changes according to that.
And also the experience that you may have in online courses.
Of course, yes. Young learners, I think, are most. So Melanie is asking about young learners. What do you think the models for young learners are? Which model can be used?
Maybe the first one, because the ADI because have more details in each step. So it's better when they are children, when they are kids, explain things step by step. And I consider the first one that's the best for children. But also I can use some constructivism or cognitive theories for another models.
So Farhad has a question here for you.
It is good for adult learners at university. Yes. All you know that all the online courses have behind a model impressed. When we design courses, we don't design the courses, online courses, as you want or as we wish. We have an instructor and a model, a framework that help us to develop step by step the plan or the curricula for the course. So for sure, and there are more easy models, not only what I mentioned. There are more, and each university or institution. For that reason, I mentioned earlier, maybe you don't have the freedom to choose the IT model and the institution. If you work for an institution, maybe the institution would choose the model for you. So, but all of the online courses has had an ID model as a structure, as a framework to develop the online course.
Thank you so much, Maria.
You're welcome.
Yes, Lubna, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Maria, for this insightful presentation. It has been really very interesting. Actually, it is not a question. Thank you. Actually, it is not a question, but it's just I'd love to collaborate with you if you don't mind. Yes. Actually, I'm doing I'm doing a research, my PhD research on ESP design, and yes. I'm suggesting within this research model for an online learning, etc. So if you don't mind, I'd love to have your email so that if we can have some exchanges in this regard.
Yes, for sure.
I'll appreciate. Thank you very much. Thank you. And
yes,
also, I'd like
for sure.
to
I work in the chat box. Yes, Lubna.
Yes, they can see that. Yeah, thank you very much. And I'd love also to thank the organization committee for this interesting and all the interesting events that you've been organizing so far. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Lubna. We appreciate that. Thank you for being part of it. If we don't have any more questions, we can safely say we are done with this webinar so far. Thank you so much, Maria. We really appreciate your time and your contribution to our platform. It was very enlightening, and we appreciate all the attendees as well who attend regularly. Some of our veteran attendees who do attend every time. So thank you so much. The presentation is not shared with the attendees. In fact, the recording will be uploaded in next 24 hours. And the link will be shared with the certificate of attendance. And please don't forget to mark your attendance in the link that was shared in the chat box. Thank you so much. And before you leave, kindly mark your attendance in the link shared before. Bye for now. Thank you, Maria.
I can't find it. Please, here, I can't see it. Can you resend it?
Yes, I will.